I know Representative Gary Click, one of really the best in the country, of course in the state of Ohio, but across the nation. And yeah, absolutely.
And we're going to have Representative Click and Klopfenstein for sponsor testimony.
But there's no more local control than Bob and Betty Buckeye.
Well, that explains why he keeps saying, well, that's not the way Representative Click does it.
I'm not supposed to get emotional, but I am.
Then we sat down with Click to discuss his bill and the controversy surrounding it.
And the chair would like to invite Representative Click to present testimony.
The question is, shall the bill pass? The chair recognizes Representative Click.
Welcome back to What's Clicking with State Representative Gary Click. And my goodness, is it ever clicking here at the State House?
Oh my, is it?
My goodness, you've had so many bills moving. HB 144, Keith's Law, has just passed through the Senate unanimously, is that
Unanimously. It went through the Senate unanimously. I started to say the Senate unanimously, but it was the Senate unanimously. And so that is headed to the governor's desk for signature. And so we look forward to that. And that's going to just provide special resources for our special needs individuals. And so we're so excited about that. And once we get that across the governor's desk, we're going to invite Keith to join us. And we'll have Keith on the podcast to tell us all about that.
That's incredible. We've had so many bills moving. Another one that we've had moving is HB 162, My Child, My Chart. You offered sponsor testimony for that. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
That's not correct.
No.
Oh, that's right. Yes, it passed through committee.
I'm working you so hard. I need to give you a day off, Janae. I am overworking you. It's hard to keep up, isn't it?
My goodness. We've had so much movement. It's hard to keep track of it all.
Right. So My Child, My Chart actually passed out of the health committee. And in a bipartisan fashion. It was not unanimous, but it was bipartisan. And we've got folks from both sides of the aisle really interested in that. And that just ensures that parents have access to their child's My Chart. And so we've done a lot of work with the hospitals. We've done a lot of work with the informatics people that put together the data. We've done some work with emergency rooms and other places to make sure that this bill has as few unintended consequences as possible. And we look forward to a bipartisan vote, maybe as soon as next Wednesday, to get that out of the House and ship that over to the Senate.
All right. That's awesome to hear. Another bill that is moving is sponsor testimony for the Charlie Kirk American Heritage Act. How did that go?
Oh, my word. That I think that went very well. And that's getting a lot of steam. You can Google it. It's all over the internet. Some people love it. Some people hate it. And that's not surprising. But and we'll talk more about that later. But just as a little teaser, what it does is it makes sure that teachers have the liberty and that they feel safe teaching about our American heritage. And you say, well, why would they be afraid of that? Well, because our American heritage is deeply rooted in Christianity. And we want to make sure that people understand that, because that is the source of our liberty. That's the source of our life. That's why America is so exceptional. But sometimes people confound the historical teaching of the impact of Christianity with actually the doctrinal teaching, and saying, well, you must be a Christian and you should be a Christian. And, those are the things that should be taught in church. I've had some people say, well, you need to bring the Bible back to schools. And I'll be honest with you, that's not my take. I don't think that we should be teaching the Bible in schools. I think we should be teaching the Bible in church. And that's where that belongs. I don't want our public institutions teaching the Bible. Now, we do advocate for religious release time, which is something totally separate. But we're not asking people to teach doctrine, but we do want them to teach history. And so we want to focus on accurate history in the United States, accurate history. And we want to make sure our teachers know that they're free to teach that. And that bill is named after our friend Charlie Kirk.
Well, this bill is so necessary at this time in history. But the most exciting thing that we're going to talk about today is property taxes. Is that correct?
Ooh, property taxes, yay.
I know our listeners are so excited to hear about this. But I believe you sat down with Representative Dave Thomas. Is that correct?
Yes. And people are excited to hear it. They're not excited about property taxes, but they're excited to talk about it. And a lot is going on in that. And And so there are so many well-meaning people out there, but really we've got to take a very good look at this, because what we have is an issue that's going to go on the ballot, and very likely going to go on the ballot. And the problem is it's only half a bill. Because
Yeah.
if you're going to say we're going to take this away, then you got to figure out what you're going to replace it with. And they say, well, that's up to you. And that's just totally irresponsible. Every bill that we present, it goes to a committee process, and they're like, okay, if you do this, then what about that? And we have to resolve that before we can actually pass a bill, because there are too many people who are going to say, no, you got to do the whole thing. And sadly, this referendum, there's a lot of people who want to eliminate property taxes. And I'd love to not pay property taxes, but what are you going to do? Uh, are we going to like raise the sales taxes astronomically? Are we going to, we've been working on reducing the income tax. Are we going to go back and raise that astronomically? How are we going to pay for, I just had a meeting with the Chiefs of Police Association today. How are we going to pay for our police? How are we going to pay for our fire? I've been with people, I've called fire departments. We've had to call EMS for some folks in desperate situations. How are we going to pay for that? Or will we even have those resources? How are we going to pay for our schools? You have to have a whole plan, not just a half a plan. Right now, they're proposing half a plan. But in the legislature, we're working to do some things too, to make sure that property taxes are both, number one, that they are transparent, and that it is at the will of the people. The people vote. And so we want accountability. Again, as I've said a few times, the whole American process has been no taxation without representation. It's never been no taxation, because society can't exist without taxation, but no taxation without representation. And so the people deserve to have a voice in their taxes. And that's what we want to make sure that they can do. And so we're working on several aspects of that in the legislature. I've got a few bills myself. Representative Dave Thomas is leading the charge on that in the House. But things are happening. But really, what I'd like to do right now is just have a conversation with Dave Thomas. We talked about a week ago, as we've said before. We're not on the leading edge. We're not breaking news here on the podcast, because we're just not a professional news organization. But we do want to bring people inside the legislature, inside, to see what's going on, why some of these things are happening. And so I want to share this conversation with Dave Thomas. And then we might actually show a clip from in the Ways and Means Committee, when I had a very friendly conversation with Paul Imhoff from the Buckeye School Administrators Association, BASA, Buckeye Association of School Administrators, BASA. Very good guy. He's opposing some of the stuff that we're doing, but it was a friendly conversation. And he's a good person. And there's a lot of good people, by the way, on this whole issue that are just trying to figure it out. And some people have this opinion, some people have that opinion, all good people. And in the end, I think we're going to get to some great solutions. But I might show you at the end of this, and we might show you that conversation that we had on why we have to do something with property taxes and how that sudden spike really affected it. But for now,
Let's jump in.
Let's jump into that conversation with State Representative Dave Thomas. Well, I am honored today to be joined by my colleague, Representative Dave Thomas. So first, take about 60 seconds to just tell us where you represent, which region, which section of Ohio you represent, and maybe a little background what you did before you came to the legislature, Representative Thomas.
Thanks so much for having me on and for talking. So former county auditor, served for 6 years as county auditor, then just started here in the legislature this past January. It's kind of crazy, Rep. Click, how fast this year has moved. Represent all the rural parts of Ashtabula and Trumbull County, so very, very northeast tip of the state. Ran for taxation issues and to represent my people. Currently serve with Rep. Click on Ways and Means. I sit right to his left. Also on public pensions, energy, and arts, athletics, and tourism.
That's because there's not much room to my right?
That's a good point.
That is because you are the vice chair of the committee, so you sit right next to the chairman. And we're in the back row right there, and I appreciate your leadership in that. In the realm of property tax, and you're actually leading the caucus, leading in the House on that issue. I actually spoke to one of the Democrats, and they said, I'm learning so much about property taxes just trying to keep up with Dave Thomas. And they meant that as a compliment. And so I think we all have. And really, we really have to address this issue. And you know what? I was at and just so for everybody's benefit, that we record this about a week and a half, 2 weeks before it actually airs. So some things may change, or actually before it publishes, we don't air anymore. I'm still using old language, uh, but shows how old I am. But I was at an auditors meeting this morning, and we talked about some of these property tax issues. And one of the things that I said is we're kind of being pulled two ways. I think that sometimes, of course, we know that there's this move to abolish property taxes, but then sometimes the people who assess and benefit from the property taxes don't want to do anything. And you and I are kind of in the middle trying to navigate that and saying, we have to do something, and we want to do something that's reasonable, uh, aside from abolishing property taxes, because there are so many benefits. As I tell people, I like that. I like not paying property taxes. I also would like to not pay my mortgage. I'd also like to not pay my car payment. But I know what happens if I don't do that. And if we do away with property taxes, we lose so many services that are necessary: EMS, fire, police, our schools, and so forth. So it definitely has to be addressed, but I don't think we want to, burn the place down in order to address it. So one of the bills that we have dealt with just this last week, as we are recording this, and today is 9/26 that you and I are recording this, and so it'll be in October before this actually gets
How's
published.
it already
But
October? Oh my word.
I know, right? Right. Time for the pumpkin spice lattes, Dave.
Uh-huh.
Um, but is House Bill 186, I think, is one of the key pieces of legislation. Can you tell us what that's about? Can you describe that for us and why it's important?
Yeah. So over the past 6 years or so, all Ohioans, top issue, biggest problem kind of that we've been constantly faced with, spiking property taxes. These
Right.
are taxes that have increased. People have seen them on their bills going up tremendously, and they've not really been given a say over how much their bill is actually increasing. Tons of
So
frustration.
these are unvoted on
Yeah.
increases.
Yep. With your tax
Okay.
bill, obviously there's levies. There's those that are voted by the people. And then part of your tax bill is unvoted. It's applied directly to your property value. As your property value goes up, then that portion of your tax bill that's charged to you also goes up as well. Ohio was really part of the new frontier. We were ahead of the curve 50 years ago by saying when the voters vote for a levy, that actually does not increase in taxes to you as a homeowner, even if your property value goes up. But over the last 50 years, we've blown holes through that protection, and still a part of your bill is attached directly to your value. And as your value goes up, your tax bill goes up too. That's where we're really kind of targeting. Because if you, the voter, say, hey, I love my local fire department and I want to vote because my fire department needs a new ladder truck, well, that's you, the voter's choice. But you, the voter, didn't
Right.
have a say when your tax bill just spiked 30%, and that money's going
Right.
toward, all those different places that you have no idea. So that's really kind of where we're honing in addition to other areas and other focuses for the tax system. Property taxes are so complicated. There's so much to it. Um, but House Bill 186, which we just introduced a sub-bill version of this past
Hmm.
week in Ways and Means Committee. This one, Rep. Hoops, who's also from your area, um, he and I are both former county auditors and have been working on this concept for a year now. So we have essentially seen over the past 6 years or so huge spikes. And one of the ways to get at that is House Bill 186, which we just introduced as a substitute bill into Ways and Means this past week. This is a bill Rep. Hoops, who's from your area, Northwest Ohio, and I have been working on for about a year. And what it does is essentially says that government should not be receiving more in unvoted revenue into it than inflation, unless the voters have decided to vote for increases. Yeah. So, with those spikes over the last 6 years, part of the biggest reason for that has been the revenue going towards schools, that protection's gone away from increases in taxation when your value goes up due to something called the 20 mil floor, or a base level amount of taxation that every school is guaranteed to receive. 20 mils is essentially $20 per $1,000 of your property value. And when the school hits that floor, that lowest level of taxation, however high your property value goes up is also how high your tax amount goes up. So if you increase your property value by 30%, well, you're going to pay 30% more to the school due to the 20 mil floor. And that's not good, because that's where all the spikes have gotten.
No.
And that really was not the intent of the legislature, way back when it was created. We've got almost 2/3 of schools at the 20 mil floor, which means a ton of property owners across the state, when their values have spiked over the past 6 years, this is one of the big reasons. So our bill essentially says you as the government should not receive more than inflation. We have an inflation cap on the unvoted increase unless your voters have approved it. Your voters approved new levies, perfectly fine. They're going to pay more because they voted for it. But they should not be paying more than inflation if they did not actually approve it. So that's the base level of the bill.
That makes
will calm things out. Yeah.
that makes perfect sense, and I understand. And I think there was some confusion on this when we were in committee this last week about the retroactivity. So it is retroactive to an extent, but not completely. Will you explain that for me?
Yeah. So we, and by the time this airs, hopefully, fingers crossed, hey, it's passed. But we
Right.
introduced a new sub-bill version of 186, which essentially recognizes that, wait a second, over the last 5 years, your bill has been much higher than it should be. You've been paying much more than you should be. And we, the legislature, should have passed some type of limit to that during all these spikes. And so we essentially, I call this the time machine policy. We essentially got in a time
Right.
machine, went back to 2022, passed 186, House Bill 186, to limit the increases to schools to inflation, what you're paying on your tax bill to inflation. And then now, here in 2026, what would your bill have looked like if we had passed House Bill 186 back in 2022? And so this new version that Rep. Hoops and I have added to committee actually has a credit for every property in a 20 mil floor school that recognizes, had we done this, what should the limit have been? And it's actually a huge number, which I think just shows how much more people are paying in their tax bills, higher than inflation, higher than what's reasonable. In 2026, if we're able to pass in these 2 weeks from now until we air, for example, in 2026, the credit amount that will show up on property owners' bills for second half is just over $600 million. Now, that is
Wow.
essentially saying
That is
instead of
substantial.
yes, over the next 3 years, it's 1.7 billion. That's a lot of money. Property taxes, just as a side note, generate roughly $24 billion. So 1.7 billion is actually a decent chunk. But that number represents how much folks have been paying based on their real estate values going up quite a bit versus what they should have paid if we capped those growths to inflation. So instead of paying 30% more, maybe you're paying 9% more. The school is still receiving more money than what they had. It's just not as much as what that spike
Right.
was that they were getting. So everyone gets a decrease
That
in
makes
their tax
sense.
bill next
Now,
year.
so everybody should see a significant decrease in the property taxes.
Yeah, if you're in a 20 mil floor school,
What's wrong with that?
which I agree. If you're in a 20 mil floor school, which 2/3 of Ohioans are, you were the ones that spiked the most. And then next year you will see a credit. It'll be the school inflation cap. And that credit will be representing the taxes that you essentially kind of overpaid. Now, we're not taking money out of bank accounts. We're not saying Hey, school, you got this money, you got to write a check back to us. We are just decreasing future revenue, which was increased due to the spike in valuations.
So I think, and we're having a couple connection difficulties, but I think we're going to be fine with that. But I think it's very significant. And I think what you're saying also is that, we're not going to ask the schools to write a check or
Right.
any of these other taxing entities. They're not going to be out of pocket, but what they will collect will be substantially less because that was never voted on, and they'll go back to what they should have been if they had not been receiving these unvoted on spikes. Is that a correct assessment? Okay, as you can tell, Representative Thomas is in his car, and so
Not driving, though.
he is
Not
not driving. There's no motion behind him. You can see that, but we lost our connection, so I'm not sure how this is going to come out in the post-editing process. But we'll try to pick up where we think we left off, and it might be a little disjointed. We'll find out. But essentially, what we're saying is there's going to be a decrease in your property tax bill, but that is not necessarily a decrease. It's still an increase for the schools, but it's based on inflation, not based on the increased property values. Would you like to dive back into
Right.
that?
Yep. So if you are a taxpayer, essentially what House Bill 186 means to you is that moving forward, your bill to the school will not increase higher than inflation unless you voted for a new levy. Now, what you will see next year as a taxpayer is a credit on your bill that actually represents the difference between what you were paying last year, the year before, after your last revaluation where you saw a 30% spike. The difference between that 30% value increase spike, what you're paying to the school, versus an inflation cap of whatever inflation was. So whatever that difference is, let's say you were paying $1,000 to the school after the last revaluation. Now, because inflation was 20% lower, now you're paying $800 to the school.
Gotcha.
You may have been paying, let's say, $700 to the school prior to the last revaluation. So you're still going to have an increase, but you're not going to have that much larger spike. And that's just an example, in terms of numbers
Right.
that we saw previously. And if you're the school, you are still receiving in revenue. And this will be for the second half bills of 2026 of next year. So in your next budget, you will receive less revenue because we are putting the inflation cap on your revenue. You used to be receiving in a ton of money. Now you're receiving in less money, but it's still much more than what you were getting previous to your last revaluation.
So I know that some schools and other taxing entities are concerned, well, we're going to be cut, but they're really not being cut any more than really they received an unexpected and unanticipated increase, a spike in the revenues that had not been voted on, that they had not anticipated receiving. And so it's just lowering it back down to what they should have been expecting anyway. So it's not really a cut. They're just not getting as much of an increase. And of course, in government institutions, when you don't get as much as you were hoping to get, that's called a cut, but it's not really a cut. They're still getting an increase, just not as much as they had hoped.
Yes. Yeah. We, I think, have all gotten used to whether, Fed, state, or local. We've gotten used to the last 5 years of, I have one, official tell me, we just have too much money. We don't know what to do with it. I think a lot of us have gotten kind of used to that because all that federal money floating around,
Right.
all of the increase in tax revenue floating around, and I think it's a very safe assumption to say that should not have been the case.
Mm,
So we can't go retro. We can't pull money from you that's already been paid, but we
right.
can, going forward, say, how can we correct this? And that's
Mm,
exactly what we're doing, is still giving increases. And moving forward, schools will still get more revenue that's not voted, but it'll only be that inflation number, not a significantly higher amount. So, 186 is a very strong, a very impactful policy change bill, and it's just one of the many. I know, Rep. Click, you've got a good number of great bills. I'm on a couple with you, and we have a number of different kind of ways to get at the system. 186 will not be the only bill that passes this year.
Right.
We've done a lot in the budget that was vetoed. I'm still hopeful that we'll able to get those policies through, ideally by the time that this podcast is aired. But
hmm
we are not walking away from this.
Right. And so two things. Number one, I think you said something very good in committee this last week, and that, people were asking questions. So there's not just one bill that's going to address everything, because there's not one bill capable of addressing everything. But in these multiple bills that we have, they are, because not every area of Ohio is the same. Not every circumstance is the same. But through this unique blend of legislation, we should be able to address everyone in Ohio one way or another. Would you like
Yeah.
to expound on that?
Yeah, this is the most transparent way to do it. We could have just done one large bill with a whole bunch of policy in it that no one could have read. It would have, frankly, I think, gotten bogged down very quickly, because when you change a whole bunch of things all at once, that slows down the process. Instead,
Right.
we've had a bunch of these single issue targeted bills that's getting full vetting. I think 186, this was its sixth hearing,
hmm
ton of testimony. And that way we can really vet out, what are people saying? What are the impacts? And then our taxpayers can kind of have a full transparent view of what's actually happening here. What's the impact to me? And we can kind of take each bill at its own. So yeah, one of the comments I think was that this is a piecemeal approach. And I think in some sense it's that way just so that we're able to actually get at the system from all these different angles. But 186 will not help those who are not in a 20 mil floor school district. But those that are not in the 20 mil floor school district haven't actually seen their tax bill spike as much as those who are in that type of district. As an example of kind of why this bill doesn't quite hit them.
hmm So, of course, I think there's been a lot of news, a lot of media, a lot of press over the fact that the governor vetoed
Mm-hmm.
portions, and including 186. Some people said that they think he might actually sign it this time, but this is going back through. And I heard that some of the folks on the new commission, the governor's commission, have actually said that this is a good policy that probably needs to go through. Can you
Yeah,
elaborate on that?
we the legislature, before I started, had a whole big committee to review, to give different recommendations on ways to reform the system. Most of those recommendations were in the budget. 186, this specific policy was not in the budget. We tried, but we decided probably standalone bill. But a lot of those recommendations were in the budget, were passed by the House and the Senate, or were very good, meaningful structural changes that the governor vetoed. And I think he's definitely regretting that now. But he created his own study committee to review, and I think they're giving a lot of the same kind of ideas, recommendations too. And I'm hopeful, one way or another, we have to have these policies passed and pushed. So, limiting, kind of, I tell folks, what are we trying to do in a nutshell? We're limiting those unvoted spikes in future taxation. We are giving the voters much more of the say over their actual tax revenue. We're bringing more transparency to the whole process itself, and then giving more local control over tax rates, which all of those combined together actually do a tremendous amount of good for our taxpayers.
Transparency and accountability are two key words that I heard there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think that's great. So I think we are running out of time. So any final thoughts on what we are trying to do in the legislature, specifically in the Ways and Means Committee, to just address the property tax situation?
Yeah. This is a big kudos to you and to the other members of the committee, that our committee has met the most out of any committee in the House. We've had the longest testimony, the most bills. This is the priority. It has taken a lot longer and is slower than what we would like, but it's because we're being as studious and as focused as
Thoughtful.
possible to make sure that we get thoughtful
We're
approach.
not sitting on our hands.
I'm not. I know you aren't. Maybe
No.
someone else is, but we're not. So stay tuned, keep paying attention, and a lot more good to come.
All right. So as we make progress, maybe I'll have you come back on
Yeah.
and fill us in
Yep.
what we've actually gotten done and gotten accomplished when it's in our rear view mirror instead of when we're looking ahead towards it. So thank you for your hard work, Representative Thomas. I
Thank
know
you.
that you've put a lot of labor into this, a lot of thought process into this. I know that you're very well trusted within the legislature. I know you take a lot of heat for it also. But if you're going to get something done, you're going to take some heat, and I think
You
you're
know
doing a
that
great
very
job.
well. Yep, you know that very well, and thank you for all
A
that you've
little
done
bit,
too.
a little bit. All right. Well, thank you, and I will see you in committee next week.
Sounds good.
Well, that was so incredibly helpful and informative. I'm sure our listeners will enjoy this. We've had some movement on some property tax bills in the House. I believe it was HB 309 and HB 129
Right.
on the House floor that successfully passed. Is that correct?
That is correct, and we try to keep you updated on those things in our newsletters. And by the way, if you're not receiving the newsletter from our office, send an email to us at rep88 rep88 at ohiohouse.gov and say add me to the email list, and that'll show up on our closing credits here in just a little bit as well, in case you missed that. But we want to keep you informed on what's happening, and we'll keep all those details in front of you as we go along. But yeah, that's happened. There's more that's going to be happening. We're continually working in Ways and Means Committee. And I think maybe now might be a good time to show that clip.
Okay, perfect. Let's do it.
Very much appreciate your succinct testimony. I'll open up to questions from the committee. Do we have any questions? Representative Click.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair, Mr. Imhoff, thank you for your service. I always enjoy speaking to you, and I think you do a fantastic job. And I think you appreciate the difficult situation we are in here as legislators trying to respond to what's a crisis in our state. And when you're talking about your budgets being affected, I am empathetic towards that. I care about that. But I also care about those moms and dads, those students, the same students who at home suffered a budget shortfall that was unintended, unplanned for, unexpected. And they had their budgets, and their budgets got messed up. And so we got to think about them as well. And I think when we look at this, I go back to when I was a young man, which was many years ago, and living, kind of hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, and so forth. And I remember I went to cash a check at the bank, and I got the money back, and it was for, I think, $300 more than what I should have gotten. Now, that was an unexpected increase. And you think, I could use this because I have bills to pay. I have things I need to accomplish. But also in my conscience, I'm thinking, there's a teller in there who's probably going to get fired. And this is not my money. I was not entitled to this. And so I went back into the bank and I said, you gave me the wrong amount back. And at first they put up their defenses like, no, we. Oh, what? And so I returned that money because it was not supposed to be mine. And when I look, and I think that is a parallel to what is happening here, is I think there was a sudden increase that was not intended by the voters. It was not supposed to happen, and it was due to those sudden spikes in property values. And I think the right thing to do is to give that back to the people that it belongs to. And I think 186 does that. Please. But explain that analysis is not correct, please.
Thank you. Through the chair and to the representative, I also respect you and appreciate all of our conversations and appreciate your service. So as I look at this, one of the things I would disagree with in the example you just gave, it was not a mistake that these districts have received those funds. That was and is the law of the state of Ohio at the time. And as we look at these districts that we're talking about who are impacted, these are predominantly our poorer rural schools. And they have allocated those dollars moving forward, not to frivolous things, but to doubling down on our efforts to focus on literacy, to focus on math, and to focus on workforce and attendance. And I see this in part as an economic development issue for the state of Ohio. As all of us know, the majority of our school districts in Ohio are rural, and the majority of our kids go to rural schools, and they often have the least amount of resources. And so we have used those funds to invest in things that are going to make a long-lasting difference in the lives of these kids in areas of the state where we need it the most. And I see it as an investment in the future of Ohio. And so I think making this cut now with very little warning, it is very difficult for folks to pull back on all of those funds that have already been committed. So we're going to be looking at things like layoffs, et cetera, that are going to impact kids. Now, when we just look at the prospective nature of the bill, I think we've talked about that many, many times. That is a reasonable thing to do, and we think that makes all kinds of sense. So as we're sitting here today, we're only talking about looking back and these cuts that we're talking about for over half the districts in Ohio. I hope I've answered your question, and I thank you for the question, and I think you might have a follow-up.
You did my job for me.
Wow, and my job too. Would you like to go ahead and ask the follow-up?
Can I make a comment to that as
Please.
well? So the valuations that were used, that is what determines the state share. So the state has given those districts less state funding based on those property valuations. And so by pulling that back, you're not making up that difference. You're still basing those numbers on those valuations, and schools are still receiving less state funds based on those valuations. And so to your example, you're not fixing the other side of it by you're saying that one side, you shouldn't receive that. Well, then we could also say, well, then the state should have been giving those districts more money because of those valuations, if we had that in place.
Thank you. And so my follow-up is, obviously, again, we are in a situation where do nothing is not the answer. And so I think we're left facing this idea. You might have heard there is this referendum where people are collecting signatures. And I tell people the choice isn't, between us and nothing. It's between, what we do and what they potentially will do. And if we do nothing, I'm very certain that the voters will do something. And then what's the answer to that? Because they're not having hearings, they're not having discussions, and I'm not even certain that no matter what we do, that might not pass, but certainly if we do nothing, that will pass. And then what? So what do you see happening when that happens?
Through the chair and to the representative, I appreciate the easy questions today. So we are not advocating for doing nothing. I think we all know that we have to make changes. We have average Ohioans who are struggling, especially senior citizens. And while you while you all are having so many conversations with people struggling, please know all of the school board members, treasurers, and superintendents are also having many of those same conversations. I was an Ohio superintendent for 16 years. I can't tell you how many conversations I had in kitchens with senior citizens who were struggling to choose between buying medicine and paying property taxes. So we have to fix this. 100% agree. But I also believe, as all of you do, that Ohioans are smart. And if we start to talk about pulling away all of the property tax revenue, I think we're talking about $24 billion a year. And right now, about a third of that is paid by businesses and Class 2 funds, which is about $8 billion, and we have to raise all of that revenue using other tools like a sales tax, income tax, fees. I can't imagine what it's going to cost to get a license plate if we don't have property taxes. I think average Ohioans understand that if they vote for that, their average tax bill is going to go up, because the entire burden is going to be on residents as opposed to sharing that burden also with businesses. So I still believe in Ohioans. I think we have a lot of work to do to explain to them how that would negatively impact them. And at the same time, I 100% agree with you. We have to fix the property tax system. I think we have to do both. And then I believe that Ohioans are going to do the right thing for themselves and for our state.
And it was very
Do we have
respectful discussion
Representative
back and forth.
Santucci?
And I try to do that as often as I can. Every once in a while, we're going to get our passions up in committee, but whenever we can, I always try to make sure that I am respectful of others' opinions. And usually I find that you reap what you sow. And of course, I think that was a very good conversation both ways, although we might have some slight disagreements on that. But as we look ahead, you already know this, but we had a special event on session last week.
Yes.
Because we had somebody from the district who was there. Chris,
Teacher of the Year.
yeah, Teacher of the Year, Chris Mansour from Tiffin City Schools. And so I was able to present him with a commendation for his achievement in that. And then I talked to him and also to Superintendent Jerry Nadeau from Tiffin City Schools. And we just talked about that whole process and what it means to be the Teacher of the Year. We looked a little bit about his career and what's ahead for him in the future, and just some inspiring things for our teachers. We love our teachers. Our teachers make such an impact, and we're so grateful for them. And so here's a little clip from that, and then you'll get to see the whole episode next week.
All right, let's do it.
How long have you been teaching?
So I've been at Tiffin City Schools. This is my 27th year. Been teaching all levels of science. Was not going to go into education. I graduated from Heidelberg in 99. Was going to go on to grad school at OU, at Hunter University, and didn't work out. So I was waiting tables in a summer at an old restaurant in town called TJ Willie's. I was waiting there. I was waiting tables. I happened to wait on the superintendent, Dr. Callahan. And it was August, and she's like, "Hey, you're new here." You know, I told her my story. I just graduated with a biology degree. And she's like, "You know what? We need a science teacher. You want to try subbing?" And I'm like, "Man, how hard can it be? It's probably better than waiting tables." Yeah, I never had an intention of being a teacher. I was going to go and I don't know what I was going to do. Maybe be a park ranger or something. But and then I went, subbed my first year, really liked it, did my classes, and 27 years later, I'm still here. So
You're
I'm still loving every day.
huh?
No, not subbing.
I'm
Not
just teasing.
subbing. I know. Yeah, it took me 2 years. So I got my first year as a long-term sub, got all my classwork done. Then I think the spring of 2000, I was officially hired. But STRS and all that has me at 27 years. So I've been the same building, everything.
That plan is actually better than what our plans were.
Yeah. And that's what I tell my students, because I have a lot of students that, especially my juniors or seniors, think like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to hold up. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes life throws you for a loop. And like you said, Providence or whatever, it's just, you just got to take every opportunity that you have, embrace it, and you never know what you're going to be doing, because I would never thought 27 years ago that I would be 1, Teacher of the Year, 2, teaching. I thought I'd be out in National Park or something. I'm not sure what I'd be doing. But
Wow.
When you look at Chris and what he's able to do, he maintains high standards. He maintains a standard of excellence, and not only in the classroom, right? He does so much for the community of Tiffin and has students out engaging in activities that benefit their community. So really, he teaches in and out of the classroom all year round. He goes to different places to do camps to educate kids, and he really is the epitome of what we strive for in education.
You've been listening to What's Clickin', the official podcast of State Representative Gary Click, covering Ohio's 88th House District. That includes Seneca and Sandusky counties in Northwest Ohio. I'm Janae Myers, his legislative aide. If you would like to reach out to us, you can send us an email at rep88, that's REP88, at ohiohouse.gov, or you can give us a call at 614-466-1374. Thanks again for joining us for What's Clickin' with State Representative Gary Click. We'll be back again soon to let you know what's clickin' in Ohio.